Hello, I'm Mags Gaulden, and this is Using Group DNA Projects in Your Family Research. A little bit of housekeeping to get us started. The content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein belong solely to the creator, Mags Gaulden, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Family Search International and Roots Tech. When we talk about group projects in general, just any group project, a group project breaks complex tasks into parts and steps. If you want to do something hard, if you break it into smaller pieces and do the smaller pieces and then put them together, that hard task has become easier. Well, it's the same with DNA group projects. Group projects allow individual DNA test takers to work collaboratively with other DNA test takers that have similar interests. The three basic types of group projects are surname projects, haplogroup projects, and location projects. There is a fourth possible project category, which would be origins. But for me, when you talk about origins, you're really talking about the location where our DNA mutated to create a different haplogroup. So really, the surname, haplogroup, and location really encapsulates what we need for a DNA group project. The four types of DNA that you can use in a DNA group project are Y-DNA, mitochondrial DNA, autosomal DNA, and X-DNA. And I'm going to do a really fast review of those in just a minute. So for Y-DNA, you can absolutely go full bore on the surname, the haplogroup, and the location because we live in a patrilineal or patriarchal society, meaning that the women normally take the husband's name when they get married. So working with a mitochondrial DNA project, you want to keep in mind that you want to use the woman's maiden name when you're working that information rather than the husband's surname. The husband's surname may help you research and find information, but that mitochondrial DNA is actually linked to the matrilineal line. For autosomal DNA, you're like, I don't know my haplogroup when I do an autosomal DNA test. No, you don't. But you may know someone in your family who has, and you may be able to work your haplogroup information based on their test. GenMatch, if you are looking at your DNA matches on GenMatch, they also list the haplogroups of your test takers if they've taken a Y or mitochondrial DNA test, and you may be able to find it there. And it's the same thing with X-DNA. You want to be able to work that haplogroup information. But for all types of DNA, you can work surname, haplogroup, and location very easily using DNA group projects. So what is a DNA group project? Well, according to Family Tree DNA, group projects are an opportunity to work with others to explore your genetic heritage. They may also be based on some sort of other aspect of a paternal or maternal lineage. If you want to find a DNA group project at Family Tree DNA, type a Google search that says list of Family Tree DNA group projects. If you don't put list before it, you're going to get a bunch of help pages, which are nice, but it's not going to get you to the search page, and that link at the bottom of this page will. And this is what that search page looks like. When I type in my Templeton name, I come up with a search that looks something like this, and it gives me lots of different ways, lots of different surnames listed. Among the 11,181 DNA group projects, there is a Templeton group project. For mitochondrial DNA lineage projects, if I typed in H because my haplogroup happens to be an H haplogroup, I get an H haplogroup and subclade project there. Hamilton, Haywood, Hope, Still, Peterson. If I was to type J into a dual geographic project search, I would get some interesting things with that as well. At GenMatch, GenMatch actually calls their DNA group projects GenMatch Ancestor Projects. And they're the same, basically. It's a group of members with a common research goal. Surnames, locations, they add admixture into that, or the origins information. And you can also do analysis there at GenMatch with other members of the project. To find an ancestors project or a DNA group project at GenMatch, you would go to your dashboard, and over to the right you would scroll down until you find the words Ancestor Projects. Click on that, and it will take you to a page where you can indeed do some analysis. You can see that I am a member of the County Antrim, County Down Ancestors and the South Carolina Ancestors. I could go ahead and put my kit number in here and do some analysis based on what I've ticked off, or I could scroll down and check out any one of the 721 projects that GenMatch currently has in its database. And I love the very first one on the list. If your ancestors were Smith, Jones, or Brown, that's kind of funny. That would be a humongous group. And you can also see that there are other places where you can find out information. There is often a Facebook group that has a matrix or an Excel sheet that you can plop your information in and compare with others. You can also have conversations on Facebook with other members. You can find that there is a good blog written by Margaret O'Brien about the GenMatch Ancestors projects, and here is the link for that. For Wikitree, Wikitree is a little bit different. It doesn't actually look at the data. Wikitree provides free space pages that are set up to display information about the data. You can't do that at FTDNA. You can't do that at GenMatch, and you can do that at Facebook, but it's kind of hard to back up and backtrack. Some people have done them at wiki pages, or if they own their own personal servers, they can set up pages there. But Wikitree really offers a great free opportunity to be able to do that and display information, charts, tables, pedigrees that would accompany the data in the DNA group project. The Wikitree DNA group projects, if you want to find one, you type Templeton DNA Group Project and Wikitree, you will find the Templeton DNA Group Project at Wikitree. If you want to see if your surname has a group project or your location or whatever, you can check the space page DNA Group Projects project for that information, or contact one of those members and they'll get you set up with the name study and get a DNA group project started. For Wikitree, some of the things that you can do is show some charts. You can show the pedigrees and other information for each one of the kits. Family Tree DNA does not consider showing a kit ID as a privacy issue because you can't figure out who the person is, and the person is not listed here. So you can interconnect with DNA's Wikitree DNA features, which are really good. You can display charts like this one that helps me understand my Templetons, or like what Roberta Estes has up on her DNA group project at Wikitree. So what is required to join a DNA group project? What is the requirement? Well, the requirement is that you have a test for Y-DNA, mitochondrial DNA, or autosomal DNA. And I promised I would go over those very quickly. The types of DNA and inheritance patterns, all the paths of inheritance are shown in yellow. For a Y-DNA inheritance, it's the male line, the father to father to father to father. And for mitochondrial DNA, it's for the male and female lines from mother to mother to mother to mother to mother to daughter. And only the mother can pass it down. Even though my brother has the same mitochondrial DNA as I have, his daughter would not have inherited his mitochondrial DNA. She would have inherited it from her mother. So only the mothers can pass it down, and those lines go back for thousands of years. For autosomal DNA, it goes back to about our 64th great-grandparents, and those are the yellow highlighted people in this fan chart. Sometimes it can go a bit further back, and sometimes it doesn't go back as far. So it's about to our 64th great-grandparents. That's the inheritance. And for xDNA, male and females have a different way of inheritance, or a different pattern. For males, it is highlighted here in yellow. And for females, xDNA inheritance is also indicated in yellow, and you can tell that they are two different patterns. And these are included in every autosomal DNA test. Why join a DNA group project? Well, that's pretty easy. to collaborate with other testers. You want to find out what other people know. And if you find someone who matches your DNA, who knows their genealogy, they can tell you about your genealogy. Another reason to join is to be able to see the DNA markers you share with other people in the project. If I go to FTDNA and I look at my dad's matches, I don't actually see any of the markers listed. I see other information, but I don't see any of the DNA data. My cousin Wayne has 4,488 matches that all have the same information. But if I want to see the data, I have to either join a project or get my matches to upload to mytowydna.org. And this is what you would see in a project. This is actually from the Templeton DNA Group project. You can see that there are some earliest known ancestors identified and some of the haplogroups identified with these testers. And this is what it would look like for the Anders surname project on mytowydna.org. You would actually be able to see these testers' data and information. Why else would you do it? Well, to get a deal on test upgrades. Family Tree DNA does offer special discounts to group projects. So if you want to do a DNA test, you may want to contact your surname, your geographic area. You may want to contact that project administrator and say, do you have money in your bank account to help me out to get a test? And they may say yes. Why join a DNA group project? Well, to make family discoveries. And I've made a few because of group projects. My surname, Gaulden. I've spent many, many, many years tracking down the Gauldens, and I was coming up with some other names that didn't make sense to me, but kind of made sense until I got my father's Y-DNA tested, and I discovered that Gaulden is a derivative of the surname Gaulden. Still an unusual, rare surname. We're only related to other people with the same surname. No Goldings in there or Goldens. But it was very eye-opening to see that information. That is very evident in the DNA group projects. Another interesting thing would be my Templetons. We've been talking about them a little bit during this. They have chartered in 1948 a Templeton clan, a Scottish Templeton clan. There's even a beautiful tartan, I love that tartan, for the Scottish clan of South Carolina of Templetons. Even though, despite all of the research, all of the information was pointing to our family, Robert, coming from Ireland. Even his son said that his father was from County Antrim, Ireland. So we knew from that information that the Scottish clan, well, it's a good idea. Then when my cousin Wayne got tested, we certainly found out that he is definitely Irish. He is RM222 and one of the descendants of millions of descendants of Niall of the Nine Hostages. So our Irish Templeton clan, they probably would disown me. And I've had an interesting discussion with people at our family reunions about the fact that we are very Irish and not Scottish. Our family may have traveled back and forth, but our DNA is Irish. To be able to DNA confirm a family line is just really important to any researcher, and I've been able to do that with my line because of some of the work that I've done with the Templeton DNA Group project. Here's an example of the Templeton surnames project information. And you can see that the project was started by somebody, was taken over by somebody else, and then I have recently taken it over, but I'm still working with a lot of different Templeton DNA researchers, and we are making breakthroughs based on the information in the project. And one of those breakthroughs is origins, our location, our geography. If I type Templeton into a general search into FTDNA's search for DNA projects for surnames, I come up with an interesting list. Cumberland Gap, mitochondrial, Cumberland Gap Y, Mountain District, Tennessee, north of Ireland, and Templeton. Those are the projects that come up when I type in Templeton. And that tells something interesting. I know that looking at the Albion Seed, Four British Folkways in America by David Hackett Fisher, that among those 4 British pathways into America, there was this one, where the north of Ireland and the west of Scotland and the north borderlands of England all went to the Appalachians. If I go back and I look at that list, the Cumberland Gap Project, the Mountain District of Tennessee Project, those projects are from the Appalachians. And I can see that the North of Ireland Project absolutely fits with my Templetons. So I know this from my research, that these people came over to the Appalachians, which gives me big hints. And I can see that in that list of information from the DNA Group Project, that County Antrim is absolutely where these 3 men, who until recently we didn't know were probably brothers, are from County Antrim, Northern Ireland. But beyond that, as I'm doing right now, I give talks about DNA and research. And I did a talk, and Ann Johnston with the North of Ireland DNA Project contacted me and said, you should put your DNA and your father, your cousins into the North of Ireland Project. We may find something interesting. So I went to my dashboard on FTDNA, and I pulled up either from the group projects at the top of the page or from over on the right. I pulled up the list of information about the projects, and I joined the North of Ireland Project, which allows me to go down further in my dashboard and click on advanced matches and do some interesting things. I can click the type of test that I want to look at, and then I can order the information from my closest relatives, like my dad and myself or my cousins, or I can order it by haplogroup, mitochondrial or Y, or by name. I can also take that information and say what kind of test I want to look at. I can identify that I want to look at all the people in the North of Ireland Project, or the entire database, or the Lawrence County, South Carolina Project. I can also run that information based on the genetic distance, and I can get a lot of really important information from that information. I can see that my cousin Wayne Templeton has 101 autosomal DNA matches and 34 Y DNA matches in the North of Ireland Project. That's pretty huge. My dad has 99, and I have 79 autosomal DNA matches to the North of Ireland Project. But more importantly, Ann Johnston and the people in the North of Ireland Project identified something else for me, which is really the biggest reason to join a DNA group project, is that the people that lead these projects have a wealth of knowledge to share. I learned that all of the matches that I have in the North of Ireland Project and all of my Templeton matches have Island McGee connections. What's Island McGee? Well, Island McGee is this little peninsula out into the Irish Sea just above Belfast. And I know that my ancestors had this view from Island McGee across Browns Bay to the hills of Antrim because of the DNA Group Project work that I've done and that Ann Johnston has done and the people of Northern Ireland in that project have done. So joining a DNA Group Project can open up vistas like this one for your family research. It's a great way to expand your knowledge, your research into your family. It absolutely was for me. Thanks very much for watching.